Ernest Holmes wrote, "We resist being what we really are. We need to accept the fuller expression of the mind that is within us. For in its creative flow through us rests our entire future, the greater person that we are and the richer life that we desire to enjoy." Again, we resist what we really are. We need to accept the fuller expression of the mind that is within us. For it is in its creative flow through us rests our entire future, the greater person that we are and the richer life that we desire to enjoy. Well, welcome. Thank you for coming out today. It's great to see everybody here today, and welcome to those of you who are watching online. It's indeed an honor to be invited into your homes. Thank you for this honor. Our monthly theme this month is vulnerability. The title of my talk today is "How Dare You?" And this is, how dare you have the courage to be vulnerable? So I want to talk about vulnerability. My 3 points: what it is, and then secondly, maybe even more important, what it is not, and then thirdly, why is it important? If we look back at Holmes' quote, what he is talking about is a willingness to connect. And the thing that's keeping us from being that highest expression can be our fear of vulnerability. And that's really the essence of what today's talk is. So first of all, what is vulnerability? I think it's impossible to have a real talk about vulnerability without talking about Brené Brown. She is a world-renowned researcher, a studier of the human condition in all forms, the social interactions with all of us. She is an incredible speaker. Her definition of vulnerability. Vulnerability is a state of emotional exposure that comes with a certain degree of uncertainty. It involves a person's willingness to accept the emotional risk that comes from being open and willing to love and be loved. The emotional risk that it takes to love someone and to be loved. This quote from the spiritual leader, the director of an online CSL community. Let's see, it's in the Bay Area. They only meet online. I think it's up in the wine country is where they actually are. But he said this about vulnerability. To be vulnerable is to explore the depth of ourselves and others, even when we are unsure of what we may uncover. It is stepping out, whether literally or metaphorically, often in the face of uncertainty and fear, for the purpose of fostering a fuller expression of ourselves and others. We keep looping back to this being a greater expression of allowing that divine current that is God to express itself through us. And along with that, I think is an urge to drop the fears, to not allow the fear of vulnerability to keep us from being that expression. Some examples of vulnerability: taking chances that might lead to rejection. Taking chances that might lead to rejection. coming out in a very straight community. Talking about mistakes that you have made. Wow, that's a good one. Unfortunately, I won't be doing much of that. If I started doing all the mistakes I made, we don't have enough sermons. Feeling difficult emotions. I think I've shared with many of you, I don't cry. I haven't since 1954. I had a teacher made me stand up in front of the class because I was crying. She called me a crybaby, and all the kids got to laugh at me. And I've never cried since. One time I did. Being honest about boundaries and expectations. It's another area for me that's really hard. I think I'm better at setting expectations than I am boundaries, but I'm not good at either one. Second point, what vulnerability is not. Vulnerability is not oversharing or dumping inappropriate amounts of emotions or personal history with wild abandon. It is not being vulnerable for the sake of saying, look at me, I'm being vulnerable and sharing all my stuff. The tone and motive of vulnerability, in the sense that we are highlighting, is one that is born from a desire to fully express oneself for the purpose of authenticity and connection. So we're going back to this connection. To be vulnerable is not to be without boundaries, nor is it to be a doormat. Vulnerability is not weakness, but is instead a conscious choice to express thoughts, feelings, and desires in a way that serves to nurture an authentic life. And I'm really glad to see as many people here today as there are, because this idea of connection is germane to the entire thing. In order to be in that place of vulnerable, you need to be in a place where you're not afraid. You need to be in a place where you are accepted for who you are, regardless of anything else, a safe place. And if we look at our mission, our purpose, and our vision statements, what are we all about is creating that community, creating that space where you are safe, that space to be your greatest and highest expression. Third point, why is it important? Why is vulnerability important? We go back to Ernest Holmes. Ernest said, there is an irresistible potential pressing against everyone for self-expression. Back to that same theme. If we listen, we shall hear it. Not as a voice, but as a feeling, or as a divine urge to express. How many times have we benefited by listening, not to a James Earl Jones voice in the background telling you what to do, like Moses, but as an urge. Some of the best experiences I've had, people say, what made you do that? I don't know. Seemed like a good idea at the time. And I think that good idea at the time can be that divine urge. I'm going to go back to Brené Brown for a moment and all of her studies. I alluded that she's a great speaker, and she is one of the most entertaining speakers I have ever listened to. Her use of humor is second to none. If you are not familiar with Brené Brown, you can Google Brené Brown, TED, vulnerability. Those 3 words in your search engine will take you to a YouTube, the one that she does on vulnerability. It's 20 minutes and 3 seconds long. But it is so powerful, and it does a lot of tying a lot of her other stuff together. In all of the years of research that she's done, and she has tens of thousands of interviews with people, she came to the conclusion that connection is why we are here. It's why we bother coming together. Connection is why we're here. You know, another one of the big areas that she focuses on, along with vulnerability, is shame. She defines shame as the fear of disconnection. It is the fear of not being part of the group. That's a powerful thing, to experience the fear of not being included with the rest of the herd. Sold out, singled out. In all of these studies on shame and vulnerability, and there are like 4 or 5 major areas that she has studied in these tens of thousands of interviews, she finds that most of the people fall into one of 2 groups. There's the people who have a sense of worthiness. And then there's the group of people who do not. There is a group of people who have a strong sense of love and belonging. And the other group is those who struggle with it. The group of people who believe that they are worthy. And then the group of people who do not. This first group that have a sense of worthiness, have a strong sense of love and belonging, are those who have the courage to be imperfect. They are willing to let go of who they thought they should be in order to be who they really are. At the end of my talks, I always give a little thing. This is what I want you to take away today. And I don't know, I wrote a paragraph. I'll get up and read it or whatever. But this is the key, I think, for us today, is the real key takeaway. Be willing to let go of who you think you should be in order to be who you really are. And of course, I am always drawn to a quote of Marianne Williamson. As I read that initial Holmes quote, "We resist being what we really are." The first thing that popped into my mind when I heard that was Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Because you are. You are all of that. And yet we're afraid of being out of the herd. We're afraid of being thought of as better than. When in fact, it is that light that gives everyone else permission to let their light shine. It's powerful. Who are you not to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Shakespeare wrote, "Our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt." Being afraid to try costs us so much. And it is that fear of not being able to belong. Today is Palm Sunday. Many of you know it's the beginning of Holy Week. Jesus did not ride into Jerusalem. He didn't sneak in, and he didn't ride on a big steed, I mean, here's this guy, and the multitudes love this guy, and they're cheering him, and the throng show up to listen to him speak. And as he came into Jerusalem, they were laying palm fronds down. Never did figure out how that happened. Their palms didn't grow there then. They would have had to go all the way to the coast. It was like 35 miles to cut down some palms and beat feet back real quick. But I don't know. Who am I? But there were millions of people, thousands of people, worship Jesus. But he did not come in like the victor. He came triumphantly, but not boldly or flauntingly. But he came with confidence and assurance, even knowing full well what was waiting for him a week later. His triumph was not over the priests or the Pharisees or even the Romans. His triumph was over his own doubts and fears. Here's the promised conclusion. Authenticity and meaningful connection are born out of vulnerability. Vulnerability allows us to build trust and intimacy in relationships, foster empathy and understanding, increase our sense of self-worth, build relationships with those who serve to support and love us, work together in partnership and community, work through and process emotions, increase our self-awareness and accountability, and opens up the possibility of growth and transformation. The very transformation that we talk about at this center. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is about showing up and being seen, even in the face of fear and shame. The call is to begin to examine areas in our lives where we have been resistant, for whatever reason, to vulnerability. Areas where hustling for our own worthiness has created a chasm between who we are on the inside and who we project ourselves to be on the outside. The adventure is gaining clarity and awareness of our connection with Spirit and how this connection fuels our connection and authenticity with ourselves and others. And so it is with this sense of that infinite creative force constantly and forever pressing against us to express itself through us as us, that I invite my colleagues, the practitioners, to join me in holding our congregation in love and light, and knowing that each and every one of us is that absolutely perfect expression of that infinite. And we do not deny that we go through the effects of life. No one escapes life and the things that are in life which we judge to be less than. We all experience things. And so I speak my word now for those who are experiencing health issues. We just simply know that that grand and perfect expression is within each one of us. And that infinite source has never been sick. It has never been mentally ill. It has never faltered in any way. And as an expression of that infinite creative force, we can simply allow that to be. We can allow the health and vitality and strength to flow through us. And I speak my word for those who are experiencing lack and limitation. We live in an abundant universe, greater than we can imagine. light arriving from stars that are so distant. They're just reaching here now from the thousands and thousands of years. And that is within each and every one of us. That abundance, that prosperity, that goodness is ours. And I speak my word for those who are feeling separation. Separation from one another. Separation from God. And I know for you, you are never out of the herd. You are never out of the group. You are never out of this thing called humanity because you are part of humanity. And you can never be separated from that infinite creative force because it is you. It is in you, it is through you, and you are always with that infinite creative force, God. And even though we experience life, we experience the trials and tribulations, we experience these things called life, that perfection, which is the truth of who we are, is the only thing that is permanent, that never changes. All of the effects fall aside. And so we just give thanks. We give thanks for our awareness of the power and presence of the infinite. We give thanks for our courage to be vulnerable. We give thanks for this chance to be the greatest expression of the divine that we can be. So we give thanks, we let it go, we let it be, and so it is. Thank you so much. It's great to have this wonderful choir Aaron, thank you for performing your magic, whatever you do to make all this happen every week. Thank you. It's the time in the service where we are afforded the opportunity to participate in another one of our spiritual practices, that being the law of circulation. This time I usually like to acknowledge some of the people that are with us online today. We have Dorothy, we have Susie from Bethel, Kaleem, I'm sure Lynn and Marion are on. My guess is Christine from Jersey is probably on as well, so I know there are other people as well. So thank you for joining us. Sometimes I like to, give some information and whatnot, ask a few questions while you're taking the time to fill out a check or whatever it is, how you're going to support us today. And this one is a question to see if anyone knows. Why was the safari cat disqualified from the race? He was a cheetah.
Tortured. I like jokes that I can share with kids.
And I guess I didn't say anything about a shortcut. We had another famous runner that took a shortcut. Judy's hairdresser in the race. Chris, yes. And oh wait, just a moment. Oh, this just in. Breaking news. An arrest has been made. There's been an arrest made in New York. Yes, it's the Energizer Bunny. The Energizer Bunny has been arrested. He was charged with battery.
Let's go back to dirty jokes.
All right, let's get this on the show. Oh, we're in pretty good shape, aren't we? Must have been a short sermon. Okay, our affirmation. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, and so it is.